Well, today I'm excited to break down one of my better projects that I did last year. So we're gonna go through it. We're gonna do the Q&A. I'm gonna show you guys all the numbers, how I found it, all that. So this is welcome to the Luxury Flip Breakdown, six-figure profits for legacy members. So what I did on this project, all of us are able to do. So I'm gonna give you the exclusive behind the scenes look at how this successful luxury flip went. It generated a solid six-figure return, and we're gonna go through the real numbers, everything, and I'm gonna pull the curtain back so you guys can answer any questions in the end because I want you guys to understand how I'm doing these and how you can apply it to any level of remodel, any level of flip, rental. A lot of these principles apply, so we'll get to it. So, man, your roadmap to luxury flip success, breaking down the high level flip. So, we're going to talk about the analysis of how we did it, the transformation using real numbers, real results, real budgeting. I'm going to show you some of the Home Depot receipts to show you the real savings. I'm going to show you a live demo of how the calculator helped on this, going through not only the flip analysis, but the budgeting part. So, we'll work on the 3-in-1 flip calculator. So, hopefully, you guys are using that. If not, we're still going to show it today. I'm going to show you the design and marketing strategies that helped on this one, proven techniques that maximize the appeal and drive the premium offers on your luxury properties. And then at the end, we'll open it up for a Q&A. So anyone that wants to ask me anything about the process, the financing, the budgeting, contractors, design, whatever we got, we'll open that up. So here's the deal. 9430 Wedgewood Drive in Woodbury. This was the project right here. It was on the golf course, which was pretty dope. My first one I've ever done on a golf course, which ended up being a huge draw. That's Prestwick Golf Course. So the purchase price, we ended up right at 650,000 on the purchase for this one. Sales price, I ended up selling that one for 1.15 million. That ended up being the contract price that we sold it at. 242,000 was the profit on this one. So that's after paying back the loan, paying back all the interest payments, all the cost to fix it up. This one had a pretty good return. Timeline was 8 months from the time we closed on it on the purchase side, from the time we sold it. That was an 8 month turnaround. It went pretty quick on this one. This was a purchase in late fall, early winter, sell in midsummer. So timing wise, it was just about as a perfect setup as you could get. And this will demonstrate how strategic vision, proper financing, and exceptional execution can create substantial returns in a high-end market. So this was a huge win, guys. This was a really good one. So how I secured this opportunity. One, wholesale network advantage. I talk to you guys all the time about relationship and how important relationship is to any business we're running, especially when we're trying to find deals that make sense. So this deal actually came to me from a wholesaler, someone that I cultivated that relationship, had built that relationship over years. This wasn't the very first property they sent me. This was after helping them not only analyze properties, but be a buyer and bring buyers. And they brought this one to me first. That's how I first heard about it. The seller was in a very motivated situation. They needed some cash. They had started a lot of projects. They were kind of doing the weekend warrior stuff. And they realized that the amount of projects that they were doing and the cost it was going to take to get done, they could not get to the end. But they wanted to sell the home. So that was the reason for them selling, was strictly finances. And they had started a lot of projects. And it was clear they weren't going to get it done. So I took same day action. This is part of the key is I conducted the walkthrough, went out there, we got the offer written that day, got signatures that day, and didn't give it a chance to get back out to the public. So after I did the walkthrough, I knew that there was something special here. Going into it, I did some back end work, but until I walked it, I really didn't know what we had. But once I got in there, Within 10, 15 minutes, I knew that this was going to be a property I wanted to go after. And I took action right away. I didn't go back home and crunch a million numbers and then talk to my lender. I knew I had to get this under contract. And I think that's what helped me secure this before it went out to other people because it would have got scooped up very fast. Value add in the negotiations, part of it was I realized they had a lot of stuff in the home. They had a lot of workout equipment, TVs, furniture. They had some really high quality lawn maintenance equipment like lawnmowers and gas cans, and they had a lot of stuff. And I asked for it. And I said, hey, what are you guys doing with all of this stuff? And they were going to junk a lot of it. They didn't know what to do with a lot of it. And so a value add to them and to me, it ended up being is I had said, hey, whatever you guys want to leave, I will take on. And they were like that whole workout gym in the basement that had all the weights and everything. They did not want to move it. They didn't want to take off any of the TVs on the walls. There was probably about, I think, 13 TVs, a full workout equipment. I'm talking about dumbbells from 5 pounds up to 70 pounds. And to them, it was a value add that I took that as is. And for me, I turned around and I just sold most of it on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. Probably ended up getting another 8 grand off of just selling the stuff they had in the house. Some of the TVs I ended up using for staging. I didn't even take them off the wall. I kind of kept the same mounts up there. And when we were all done, I put those back up. So, key takeaway on this part, speed and decisiveness creates opportunities in the luxury flips that other miss. So, you got to jump on it. Just like any flip in this game, you have to come into that showing prepared and ready to take action as soon as you can. Otherwise, you will lose out on some of these deals. So the financing strategy that I used on this one is I used commercial financing to structure this deal. So I utilized the specialized renovation loan where the commercial funding allowed me to buy the home and to do the renovation costs. So we did both of them. So the renovation costs, we ended up having a $175,000 estimate on the renovation cost. So it was the purchase of the 650 plus the 175 in renovation costs. And I did 20% down on the whole thing. 20% down on the whole thing. And from day one, I had those draws up to 175 grand. Now, the draws had to be done with licensed contractors, and I needed to either pay for the receipt, show a paid receipt to get that money back, or I needed the actual invoice from my contractor that we sent to the title company, and then they would pay the contractor directly. So the draws was not just I asked for $30,000 and they give it to me. I had to prove that I either paid for something or I had to give them the invoice, and everything went through the title company on all the draws. Interest rate. So the reason I use commercial financing is I'm typically 2 points above prime, 2 points above prime. So on this project, it ranged from 7 to 8% interest on the total loan on this project. And as far as points, origination fee was 0.5%. So it was real cheap money compared to using like a hard money lender. Now, I use hard money lenders on some projects. On these bigger to medium sized ones, I think using hard money might take away a lot of your profits. But I prefer commercial financing on the bigger ones, and I will only do them if I get the renovation budget as well. I think it's a very powerful tool is to use the commercial financing. And at the end, if you guys want to talk about hard money, I can go over some of those options as well. But commercial financing, that's what I use. All right, let's look at what it looked like. So I'm gonna go through some before and after pictures so you can kind of see the before, the after, and what it needs to look like. Now, some of this was actually done by the sellers and I finished it off. Again, they were kind of weekend warriors. They were doing some of the stuff on the side, and a lot of it was maybe 60 to 70% of the way there, and I needed to make it 100%. But you can see clearly on the left, it had no curb appeal. It was your traditional 90s brick build, no appeal at all. And I brought in the kind of creamy white with the brown. The roof was already done. The garage doors were already done. So I wanted to play off of that. And normally I would do like a white and black look, but I just played off of what was already there. Made it real modern, gave it a nice fresh look. Here's what the back looked like. Again, that was on that golf course. So that whole view was overlooking the golf course, and they had overgrown trees. Just taking out the trees alone opened up your viewing angle. I made the deck wider and longer, and then you added the deck upstairs for the owner suite. So now coming off of the owner suite, you could see the golf course, and up that high, there was actually a lake view. So again, when I literally within 10 minutes walking through this property, I was like, done. I know that we can make this look nice. So that's what the before and after looked like. They had already put in a fence, so thankfully that was there. I just needed to do some touch-up paint, built that deck. I had to do some concrete work. I had to do some sod work, bring in some landscaping, things like that. So the biggest expense here was the deck. The second was making sure the house was repainted. But I didn't have to do any new siding, nothing like that. So I kind of lucked up there because they did a bunch of that. Here's what the kitchen looked like. So you can see the kitchen was just a very 90s look, I guess, is best we could say. It had that original oak hardwood floors, kind of that oak kitchen look. It had a really brown backsplash. And then on the right, you can see we softened everything. We brought in white, we brought in the thick trim, brought in the nice handles, gold handles, brought in wine fridges, really just dress it up, did a nice appliance package. Now, these cabinets on the right, all of these cabinets came from Home Depot. All the light fixtures in here, except for the entry chandeliers, came from Home Depot. All of our vanities, everything was a big win going through Home Depot because I'm going to show you how we saved almost $5,100 on just the cabinets alone on this project going through Home Depot. But again, part of picking out the design was going through the neighborhood and looking at what was selling in the neighborhood, and everybody had white kitchens that were selling at a high number. I brought in the center island to break it up a little bit, bring in some wood, but everything was white. So I didn't rock the boat. I just went with a nice white cabinet and it worked. And it sold really good just by doing that. Here's our bathroom. Man, this goes without saying, they had carpet in the bathroom. Carpet in the bathroom. I don't know who thought that was ever going to be a good idea, but they had bathroom in there. The mirror was way too big. The old school spa looking tub. So basically, we just gutted everything. And if you look at that picture on the left, over to the right, they had a water closet. That's where we ended up putting the shower. So we built a new shower in here, but brought in the cool design on the tile floor, brought in the new vanity again. The vanity, the tub, and the faucet, that was all Home Depot. The floor tile came from Floor and Decor. But the mirrors, the vanity, that standalone bathtub, everything else you see, that was a Home Depot product. Now, it was an online Home Depot product, so you couldn't find this in the store, but my rep was able to order all of this. So it all came pretty quick. My rep helped with the deliveries. So I didn't have to go into the store to pick all this. I shopped literally online and got my discounts. So it was pretty good. But I went for that spa look, went for what was in style again. The inspiration for this bathroom was going through a lot of new builds. There was a new build community right around the corner. I went to their broker opens, I did some showings, and this was the look that was in those new builds. And multiple agents that came said that they were looking at new builds in addition to my property. And they said the inside felt a lot like new construction and they really liked that. So that is where some of this design elements came from. So here's a sunroom. Now, this is where you start on the luxury ones, where you have to start standing out, where you really have to start picking areas that you can define, areas that you want to pop. So on the left, you can clearly see what the sunroom looked like. It was very old, it was dated, the decor wasn't very good. And on the right, I made it a very strategic setup. So this is kind of your wine area. This is your kind of, I want to grab, a drink and I want to watch the golfers. So I played that up to say, how can we make this more of a wow factor? And that's where that wine feature comes in. So you can see this wine feature right here.
This one, cheapest maybe 740.
This wine feature was custom made on site. And we did the backsplash, the cabinets, everything. So when you came in, it was a defined space instead of just being open like it is on the left. And we tried to bring in some wow factor. And part of it is I kept the ceiling. The ceiling ended up being a big win. That was already there. I just played off of it and just cleared the rest. But this ended up becoming a really big talking point and a big gathering point on all of our showings, our broker opens, our feedbacks. This room was definitely one that people talked about. All right, strategic renovation. So, elevating everyday living is basically what I was trying to go on this. So, I approached this with a clear vision, creating a home that offered luxury experience in everyday moments, focusing on the features most valued by affluent buyers in this neighborhood. So, this was a golf community. So, I wanted to highlight the golf course as much as possible. It had a entertaining style vibe. So I really dressed up. If you had your friends coming over, either before we went to golf or after, and we're just hanging around, I really, really focused on that because I knew the buyers coming in were going to have an appeal to that golf course. So I really made the kitchen upgraded, made it a very much entertaining. We brought in the engineered hardwood flooring. The design package for the lighting was a one-off. I really spent time picking out light fixtures. This area had really good areas for the dining room chandeliers. When you first walked in the door, big dangly ones. That was where I went outside of my normal vendors and spent a lot of money. And we touched almost every aspect of this house that the previous sellers hadn't. So some of the challenges on this was, man, we had permitting delays on the deck. We had some permitting delays on the basement. We had some supply chain issues on the imported fixtures. So those light fixtures I was talking about, we had some pretty big delays on getting those shipped in because they were not in the US. We found some water damage after doing demo, so we had to address that. And then it was really some contractor issues where we were trying to get stuff done quickly, but some of the contractors weren't around. So that was some of the quick challenges. But I really, really focused on putting myself in the shoes of the buyer coming in and thinking, if I wanted to live in this neighborhood as a buyer, what do I want? So instead of just fixing it up to be nice, which is cool, I really focused on what the end user wants. Now that can be on any flip we're doing, but this one was real specific, especially when you start getting up to the higher end flips. You really have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes and ask yourself, why does the buyer want this property? So when you do your design, cater it to that. We're going to go through the rehab budget. So rehab budget breakdown, flip analysis using the calculator. So the total rehab on this property was right around $176,000. That was all in. Home Depot, when it was all said and done, I saved 19%. 19% is what I saved on the materials. So it was roughly 33 grand. This is real Home Depot receipts on this project. So this isn't just made up. So the one on the left, you can see that was a 24% savings. That was a lot on the kitchen cabinets, some faucet fixtures. You can see that one we saved $5,100 right there. The one on the right, that was building materials. So that gives you an idea of what we saved on just getting the building materials in. That one was right around 19%. So just between these two right here, that averaged 22%. So that's a huge, huge savings when you're looking at doing your flips. And that's why I tell you guys, utilize Home Depot. Home Depot doesn't have everything. There are other suppliers, but I'm telling you, if you get in with Home Depot and start looking at their online stuff, you can save some pretty, pretty big money. Questions so far from anybody?
Hi, Suzanne here. Good
Yep.
afternoon.
Okay.
Uh, Several questions. One, I just want to understand when you said that it was a wholesale, did you just mean that it wasn't on the market yet?
Yeah, so a wholesaler got it under contract. It was never going to go on the MLS. And so that wholesaler brought it to me.
Okay, got it. And then when you, like, just curious, what were some of the main indicators that told you you wanted that project? Was it just the golf course? Just any recommendations that you could provide if you get the opportunity on a property of such and you do a walkthrough?
Yep.
What are some of those main indicators you should look out for?
Yep. So when I start getting into the higher end properties, so the
Hmm.
ones that I know are going to sell for quite a bit, I want to make sure there's a draw. Like, what does this property offer that's different than everybody else? So, is it on water? Does it have a lot of acreage? Is it on a golf course, a parkway? Does it have a unique view? Is there something unique about the basement, like it's got a big theater room or a horse barn? So this particular one, knowing when it was on a golf course. So right there, number one, I was like, man, it's on a golf course. It has automatically has a draw. The yard and the land, when I showed up, also was a huge draw. So not only you had this backdrop of the golf course, but then you had a really big backyard. So the neighborhood made it feel like it was just massive, that it was just like a really big property. So just eyeball test driving up to the home, I was already impressed as a buyer, investor, fill in the blank. And then doing the walkthrough, seeing the size of the property for what they were asking and doing some due diligence before I got there. A lot of houses were selling in the 8 to 1.2 million. So I knew just based on the size of the square footage, the yard, and the golf course that this one was going to be something special. I didn't know exactly what my end sales price was going to be. I just knew based on those three things, it was going to be a good deal.
Got it. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep. All right, so this is the actual flip calculator that all of you guys have access to. But this is plugging in the numbers. So over here, 9430 Wedgewood Drive, purchase price was 650, renovation 175. I did the purchase renovation at 100%. You can do purchase only. You can switch it back up to the full one. So I did 20% down. I had closing costs right at $6,000. My annual maintenance on this was 1,800 bucks. My utilities ended up being 4,500. Property taxes were 7,600. My insurance 3,200. I wanted a 20% profit margin on this property. My after repair value, so basically my sales price was 115, like we discussed. My resale, so me being a licensed realtor, I only had to pay a buyer's agent and then my closing costs. So I was right at 3%. Some of you might be not realtors on here, and it might be a 6%, and it changes your profit. But for me, I was able to keep that in my pocket. Duration 8 months. I put in here as an exit strategy. If I were to get 8,000 a month in rent, what would that look like for an exit strategy if I had to hold it? My loan term was for 1 year. Like I said, my interest rate was between 7 and 8%. I had no points on the front. I didn't do any gap funding, nothing like this. So I didn't have a gap funding rate. But using this calculator, you can put all this in here. So if someone were to give you the 20% down, say someone gave you $100,000, to finance this deal, you can put that in there and you can see how it changes everything. So I did not have that. So when I look up here, I can see my cash on cash return was 113%. My net profit was 242,300 and my profit margin was 27.7%. So I drastically hit that. You know, I went above and beyond. My total investment was 873,000. My interest was 30,800 is what I paid to the bank. So total cash out of pocket for this deal, total cash was 213,000. So that's where you get the cash on cash return is my actual money I came up with for this deal was 213,000. And I was basically able to double the actual cash return. So pretty big win on this one. But part of it was all the terms. Like if this would have been 850, you know, I still would have made 34 grand, but that's not going to work. Profit margin at 3%, no bueno. So if I was at 750, you know, that one at 130,000, I think most of us on this call would be like, Corey, I would take that. So it's at a 14%. So I still probably would have done a deal that's creating this type of windfall. But as it may, it was 650 what I got it for. The other key here is what I sold it for. If this would have been, say, only $1 million property, I'd be at 96. So again, not necessarily a bad return, but on the numbers that I'm putting in, you know, do I want to make 96 on that? You know, not sure. But you can play around with all these numbers right here, very detailed. And then it also breaks it down in graphs that you can explain. And all this is printable. So you can print it, you can share it with your investors, you can share it with your lenders. So you can really break it down. Now, this is where I did the budgeting. So this is just a line by line budgeting. And that's how I came up with it. So part of this is I was able to obviously fill it in more detailed on the back end. So in the beginning, I didn't have all the numbers. It was an estimate. But now that I have real numbers, I'm able to put it in. But that's why it says construction budget estimator. So you can literally get your budget going and then come right back over here and fill it in. But on here, plans and permits, 750. Demo was only about 2,500 bucks. The basement was unfinished, so really we were just demoing kitchens and bathrooms. So there wasn't a ton of demo. We didn't have anything with the foundation. The roof and gutters, there was a couple shingles we needed to repair, but we didn't have to do anything crazy on that. The exterior siding, we just had to repair and paint. There wasn't anything crazy on that. So that was 2,500. Windows were good. Garage and driveway were good. Framing, spent about 3,000 bucks framing up the basement and some of the stuff on the main area and bathrooms. Finished carpentry. Again, most of this came from the basement. We used a lot of the doors and trim that were already in the home. We just updated in areas we needed to, like we redid a laundry room. Obviously, the basement we did all new. So there was places we didn't have to do every door. We didn't have to do that. But that was about 5,500 bucks. Sheetrock and insulation. This was mainly the basement and then the bathrooms. Interior paint, spent 12 grand painting everything in the house. Flooring, carpet, upstairs and downstairs, and bringing in the hardwood floor was 12 grand. Kitchen, spent 21 grand on kitchens, and there was 2 kitchens in here. So it was 2 sets of cabinets, 2 sets of countertops, appliances, all that. Bathrooms, we spent 7,500 bucks on the bathrooms. Plumbing, electrical, and again, you can go through here and literally line by line give you a reminder of, hey, did we install a water heater? Let's get that in there. Did we just repair electric, or was it a new panel? Appliances, keep going down, landscape, basement, so miscellaneous. This was staging and raw materials. So a lot of the stuff up there was a lot of labor costs. This was staging and raw materials. I was 12% over on my 150 where I wanted to be when I originally sat down, so it ballooned up a little bit. And this is where I got the 176,000 for my budget. And again, This is a really good tool to use before you get into a rental, a flip. This is a line by line way to really help you get your budgeting locked in. So questions on the flip analysis or the budgeting?
Hey Corey,
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
can you hear me? On the budgeting, are you obviously just at that point where you can estimate like roughly what the costs are on like some of these line by line like items, or do you like have contractor like with you kind of on the spot, kind of helping out like, hey, if you got to do, two or three, you know, components to the basement, like it'll be this, but like how are you like estimating like
Yep.
cost for that?
Well, both. Yep, both. So I am at the stage in my career where I've done so many of these that yes, within reason, I can do the eyeball test and be like, hey, man, that kitchen's gonna be about 20 grand. To finish that basement's gonna be 30 grand. So that is part of it. But I do bring my contractor team a lot of time on my first showing. So one, they can see stuff that maybe I can't see or pick something out that's bigger, but they can also start to give me an estimate. But for the most part, yes, it's just being on site doing it and doing many of them. And if you're not at that level and you're trying to act quickly on these deals, then you need to start bringing your contractor with you on some of these
Got it.
showings, and so that you can speed it up for sure. And then obviously when I get home, I start diving into it a little bit deeper.
Mm.
Um, but for the most part, like this particular deal, the margins look so big. I was like, hey, even if I got this sold for 1 million, which was low, I was like, there's gonna be some meat on the bone without knowing 100% what that budget is.
Yep, got it. Thanks.
Anybody else? We'll keep it rolling. All right. Well, again, I mean, this is real receipts right here from Home Depot. I keep telling you guys, lock into that Home Depot one, man. It'll be powerful. So staging. Staging's always, always, always a must. I even do staging even on the lower flips. You have to be staging your properties. It creates that emotional connection. Luxury buyers purchase lifestyle as much as the property. Staging creates an immediate emotional connection. It creates a more comprehensive approach. I stage the whole house. I stage the bathrooms, closets. I put in the closet organizers anywhere I can. You want to even get your mirrors up. You want to get towel holders up, toilet paper holders. You definitely want to take all plastic off of appliances. So inside a fridge, you want to take all that stuff out. A new stove, you want to take all the things out. You want to stage everything, top to bottom. Now, on your smaller remodels, like your one stories and those ones, you could probably get away with doing just the main level. So I have done a bunch of those where I'll just do the main level and not stage a basement. But at least when that buyer walks in, they get that wow factor right away. Hey, I can see my family here. I can see us cooking in the kitchen. Hey, my bed will fit. I'm in this bedroom. I didn't know if it was big enough, but now that I see a bed here, I know it'll fit. I personally think virtual staging is a no-go. I think that creates a bait and switch where if a client sees it online and they have a certain vibe for it, and then they turn around and they come do the showing and it's a blank slate and there's nothing there, I think that's a big turnoff, especially in the luxury space. So me personally, I would never touch the virtual staging because I don't want that bait and switch vibe. Marketing strategy beyond the MLS. So obviously MLS is a big part of it, but I do a ton of marketing before we ever get to the MLS. So this particular property, I did multiple exclusive events. I did a real producer event. Some of you guys know that magazine, but we did a real producer event right there where we brought in, it was probably about 100 agents from the Metro that came and looked at it. We catered it. We did lunch. We gave away some giveaways. I also did a private broker open with agents that have sold a lot of homes just in that area. So I personally reached out to the agents that were doing a lot of deals there, invited them over for a personal broker tour. And then I also did multiple social events. So this was events open to people outside of the real estate world. I did a boxing night there where I just hosted people over and did a pay-per-view boxing and ordered food. And then I also did a happy hour mixer. And these were open to non-realtors just to get the word out. I did the premium visual content, so it goes without saying, but very professional pictures, specialized lighting, did the cinematic video tours, the whole drones, everything. It was a multi-pronged approach. I always do a video of the property. I always do drone pictures. And I'm starting to do the Matterport also, where it does the whole layout, schematics of how big the bedrooms are, how big the living rooms are. That's the latest component I did. And then digital promotion. So I did targeted social media ads, did a huge email blast out to my 5,000 people I have in my email database, hit them multiple times. And then I featured it in different premium real estate platforms where other people shared it. So again, when it comes to marketing any level of your flip, when you want to sell it quickly, it can't just be put it on the MLS, set it and forget it. At certain price points, you might be able to get away with that. But once you start getting more involved in some properties that have a higher dollar amount, you want to be doing a lot of pre-marketing on the MLS before it ever goes live. I'll say this to you realtors on here. Once you have a realtor license, if you put these properties coming soon on the MLS, you can't do any of these events. Once it goes coming soon, you can't do it. And if you do, you will get fined. So all of these events I did before I ever did a coming soon. So it was never actively posted as a property for sale. It was always an event with this property. You guys get the difference? It was an event with this property. Now this property is going to be for sale, but there was no marketing materials yet that said, hey, this house is for sale. And in fact, I used those events to do a questionnaire for people that were coming to say, hey, what is your opinion of this property? The good, the bad, the ugly. What's your favorite spots? Hey, is there something you saw on this property that needs some maintenance or attention? And what do you think would be a list price for this property if you were to list it? So again, I had my own thoughts in my head for pricing. I had my own thoughts in my head for like what was going to stand out and what wouldn't. But having hundreds of realtors come and give me that information really helps before it ever went to the MLS. Some of the lessons learned, what worked well was design and collaboration, premium materials I selected in key areas. I gave some contractors performance incentives if they got stuff done on time or before we even had the date. My staging worked out really good. The staging on this really popped. And my exclusive broker network events, not only did they work to drive interest in the property, but I think from those, I must have created at least 5 to 10 agents that I still am in contact with that periodically send me deals. So that was a big one. Some of the challenges faced was budget adjustments, timelines. That's always a problem. Permit delays, material back orders, and coordinating my special subcontractors. So like the wine feature that I had to have built, that was a one-off person that only does that, but everything else had to be done for him to come in and do that. And multiple times I had to reschedule that. So when you start getting in these higher end ones and you have someone who's real specific at one thing, it might be tough to try and coordinate all that. Another key takeaway I'd say is having a 15 to 20% budget cushion. So try and have, $10,000, $15,000 on hand at any given point that's just a cushion that you're not tapping into. You just want to keep that there because it gives you that peace of mind to know that, hey, if this project goes longer or over budget, I have that money to pull on. That was something that really helped me along the way. Here's the tools I use. Obviously, the calculator. Definitely come up with a budgeting calculator and your own flip calculator. That is huge. Don't go into these guessing. Go into it knowing exactly what you're getting into, and you're never gonna hit the numbers right on the head from the jump. You know, whatever you come up with from day one is gonna be different at the end. But you want to have a working idea of where I should be, where my range should be. Two, project management systems. You have to come up with a system to help manage these. If it's you and you are going to manage these, come up with a way that you can manage these properties effectively while still doing whatever business you're in. Otherwise, hire a project manager. Me personally, I do the management on all of these. I am at the top and I'm the one delegating everything. And then I have my subs be the next layer. Strategic partnerships, that's always key. That's how we find off-market opportunities, high-end buyers, premium marketing sources. Really, really look at strategic partnership. And then number 4 was my material sourcing advantages. Again, I rely heavily on Home Depot to create a lot of incentives for price reduction in these flips, but also being in the game and doing a lot of flips. My subs like electricians, plumbers, HVAC, a lot of these guys, I'm able to get more discounts by doing many deals over a course of a year instead of being a one-off. So material sourcing and your contractors is another huge way and another tool that you can save money on these. So we are at the end. So this is for sake of time. I want to honor everyone's time. We got about 10 minutes if people have some questions. And so your path to maximize and flip profits. So this is where I want to open it up. I've been doing all this talking, trying to break it down. I'm sure someone in here has some questions. I put some common questions on the left to see, kind of jog your guys' memory. But hey, let me open it up to you guys, the audience. What do you guys got? Anybody?
Well, I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
First off, thanks for putting this on, man. Great, great insights. Just great presentation.
Yep.
Love it. Yeah, you wrote down one of the questions I had, but going back to the financing component, I know you kind of broke it down, but yes, on these high-end flips, I could imagine ideally, yeah, the commercial, lending is, ideal, right? But
Yes.
but yeah, you kind of mentioned if you had to use hard money lenders on this, can you kind of talk about that side of it as well as far as
Yeah,
the impact as far as yeah, like profits, things like that if you went the hard money like
for
route?
sure.
Yeah, can
For
you
sure.
kind of talk about that?
Yep. So on a deal that has this type of numbers, you just have to realize you're going to spend double what you would doing hard money. So right away, you just got to know it's going to be very expensive. So on some of these higher margin deals, it works. So instead of making 200,000, you make 150 or 120. So it really works. In the hard money on something like this, your hard money lender at this level is probably going to want some type of collateral
Mm,
outside of just the house. So they're probably going to want to put it on a rental property, a personal property. They're probably going to say, hey, I'll give you this type of money, but I want to collateralize it. And some of the places like a Renovo and other places would still probably want 20% down. They're probably still going to want 20% down. But some of these hard money lenders, they will give you the money to buy the house. So they'd fund the 650 and then they would say, hey, Mark, you got to fund the whole rehab project. So in
mm,
that scenario, you need way more than 20% down. So you would
mm-hmm,
have to have 150 or 180 to really get it done. So the hard money typically works better on your 400 and under. I'll say this on something like this, to really make it work, you'd probably want to stack a hard money lender with a secondary lender. So your hard money would do the purchase, and then your secondary lender would do the rehab.
Yep. Got it.
But I wouldn't necessarily recommend these higher level ones using hard money unless you've been in the game for a while and you've flipped a lot of properties. And you're like, hey man, I've done 15, 20 plus of these. I know what to expect.
Yep.
So, all right, anybody else? Otherwise, we can wrap it up. Otherwise, I'll stay on and answer any questions y'all got. Well, all right then. Well, hey, reach out to me anytime. Our next event we have is next Monday. We'll be actually at a new construction property. So that's one of our legacy members going through what it takes to do a new build. That's going to be fascinating for all you guys that ever thought about doing new construction. So I highly recommend that's next Monday, Golden Valley. It's from 1 to 3. And then our next two Zoom calls, one will be the AI tools that we're using to basically scale our businesses. That's one of them. And then what we're using for management of time. So those are the next two Zoom calls. And I got some pretty good surprises coming up for some guest speakers like we did with my guy Dax. Some of you guys were on that, but Dax is a AI specialist, and we did a demo of an AI agent breaking everything down. So other than that, man, I'll see you guys later, and hopefully see you guys on Monday at the new construction event. So
This
Yes,
was awesome.
sir.
Thanks, Corey.
all right, see you guys.
Peace, Corey.
See you.